I think everyone wonders what they would do if they saw a ghost.
At the heart of horror, there has always been more than spooks and scares.
Sometimes, it's not what you see, but what you hear.
Welcome to Sound Scary.
Each week, we talk to the artists, the musicians, the fans, the people who haunt the shadowy corners of your mind.
Join us as we delve into the deepest,
Darkest.
and most unforgettable earscapes.
Welcome to Sound Scary.
So, welcome to another episode of Sound Scary. I'm your host, Ryan Cultrera, and today we have a very important film to discuss. I'm here with my co-host,
James Oster. Hey guys, this film means a lot to me, and I think it was very important for me and Ryan to talk about it, and I'm really honored beyond belief to have the filmmakers who bring us Antebellum, Christopher Renz and Gerard. Thank you for joining us on this adventure today.
It's our pleasure. Thank you for having us.
we're very excited to talk to you about this. I think, that's one of the takeaways from this film too, is that it provides an opportunity to have these important conversations that maybe a lot of people aren't comfortable having. I think your film provides this launch point to address this grimmer, darker side of something that's been romanticized in American film in the past.
For Christopher and I, we had romanticized what the experience of making a movie would be like, and being a responsible filmmaker in a time that feels most urgent. And for all of the pieces that we had made and created together over the past 10 years, subsequently, we enjoyed complete and total sort of anonymity, and we could make art and be the people we want to be, which is behind the scenes. Mm-hmm. This film demands our audience, that the movie-going audience demands an audience with us, is what I mean. That who are you and why? And I think for Christopher and I, it feels like a moment where if you are entertaining for entertainment's sake, I think that you are a part of an orchestra, maybe playing a violin on the deck of the Titanic. I think that is either you're completely blind to the reality of where we're at, but we choose to scream from the rafters that we think that there is an opportunity to right this ship, but that window of opportunity is quickly closing. And art oftentimes is the most, in many situations, the only way to get through to people, for us to wake up. But this art is incredibly polarizing. It is going to create polarizing conversations. There will be people on the extreme ultra right, and there will be people on the extreme ultra left, and they will have conversations about how it made them feel, or was it necessary. And I would say that Antebellum is completely necessary for this moment, and that we feel, and it's a responsibility to have access to some of the most gifted people, hardest working folks in crew that make a movie happen, and that they all join your adventure to create this thing, and that they have bought into your idea. Yes, they make a living doing this, but they have a lot of different movies and shows they can be on. And so when we were working on set, it was really clear to us that everyone that joined, they joined the movie because of what it was. And they wanted us to pursue it till the very end, to get what was on the page on the screen. And that's what we worked so hard to do. So, hopefully when it drops, it will cause this big conversation. I think we're already having, obviously we're already having a huge conversation in the space. It's just that maybe this movie puts a visual document, an art document that helps to articulate some of what this is and what we can do to prevent ourselves from continuing to careen ever closer to a cliff.
Here's the thing. Times are complicated and times are rough right now, especially with race relations, especially with the way of the world right now. It's a terrifying place. Was there a moment that happened that kind of lit the fire, that you said, okay, we need to tell this story because we're careening fast downhill?
We were working on Hillary Clinton's campaign. We were creating commercials for her. And I remember Christopher and I looking at each other and saying, these guys need to put their foot on the gas. And we had concerns because they wouldn't play our hardest hitting pieces. They felt like, yeah, we've got this. That's how we felt. And the night of his election, we were in Florida. I went to bed early because I knew it was over. And I felt sick, and I felt like I was experiencing a slow motion 9/11. And I knew that we were headed toward disaster with this person. And then at that moment, I don't think that we ever considered that Antebellum was going to happen, or what movie was going to be our first movie. I just knew that we needed to get busy quickly in accessing every piece of weaponry in our artistic toolbox to amplify a whole host of really urgent and important issues, not the least of which, within the context of Trump's America, has been amplified 1,000-fold in race. But when we moved to Los Angeles in 2017, about 8 or 9 months prior, my father suddenly passed. And that proved to be a really traumatizing experience. My best friend then passed. And it was just, and he was one of the bonuses of moving to Los Angeles, that, okay, I'm going to get to hang with my brother, Troy, like this is going to be great. And unbeknownst to either of us at the time, he was having issues. And was hiding it from everyone. But anyway, he ended up passing suddenly. And so I had this horrific nightmare. And that nightmare, I wasn't the star of the dream. And everyone, I think, is the star of their own dream. I was observing this woman, and her name was Eden. And she was an enslaved woman, and she refused to refer to her tormentor by name. She would only refer to him as him. And all of these little details of the nightmare were jarring, and it felt like a woman who was so desperate to escape and to get help that she was screaming across dimensions. And for the first time in my life, I understood that time as a concept, and that these imagined barriers, that there could be something much bigger at play, because it felt so real. My response to it was visceral. And so that night, when I was awoken out of the nightmare, I wrote down all of the details of it in the notes of my phone, which I would never open my phone at like 2:30 in the morning, because it would completely knock me off and keep me from going back to sleep. But I knew I had to write it down because I would forget it. And the next day I told C about it. He was like, "That's crazy. We got to write this short story." We put pen to paper, wrote the short story that day. That was in October of 2017. And for us, it was going to be a short story. We really respect the written word. We've written op-eds for Time Magazine and for Esquire and other things. It felt like, okay, well, it was a short story. That's it. And then Zev Foreman, who is the first producer on the film, got a hold of the short story through a friend of ours, Kenny Mack, who said, "You got to read the short story." And then Zev met with us and said, "You got to make a movie out of this." And we said, "Okay, well, you got to get someone to write the script and we'll direct it, of course." And he said, "Well, you'll lose complete control if that happens. That's not the way that's not the way any of this works. I would suggest that you write it, at least give a stab at it, and then we'll see, where we land." And so we wrote the script. We started writing the script early December, and we had our first draft ready in February. And Zev was so blown away by the script, our first draft. He gave us notes. We went back and forth. We were out to market by end of February. We were into deals, considering deals by March. So that's how that all happened.
Wow. And you guys are continuing a bit of a tradition, I suppose, where horror has always been a launching point for touching on bigger overarching issues in our culture, from Romero's films talking about capitalism to Elm Street talking about the sexual crisis of the 80s. What attracted you to approaching this story through the lens of the horror genre?
I would say we didn't initially go into it looking for it to be a straight horror, and obviously this movie is not a straight horror. It's not a traditional horror film. It has horror elements, it has thriller elements, drama, suspense. There are a lot of elements. It's difficult to categorize, but the premise of the film is horrific, and we thought it made sense to lean in to those genre elements where it made sense.
It's also, by definition, that's what horror is. It's something that causes fright, scare, and disgust. And that's the actual Webster's translation of it. I think through the years, we've seen so many iterations of what horror is and what it looks like, and whatever becomes the sort of dominant iteration or demonstration of what is considered horror becomes the standard. And if you look back to the 70s, for instance, or like 1968 with Rosemary's Baby, and then you go to the Stepford Wives, you go to Invasion of the Body Snatchers, you go to Jaws, which is like 1975, which is insane. There wasn't even that's when we got to this place where it wasn't monsters or that we were creating. They were monsters that existed, that were in nature, and we thought that within a world that we find ourselves living in terms of movies, where everything is fantastical, everything is in some way grounded in superhero, that maybe, just maybe, that's been a part of the problem. that we've been so seduced by the idea of a savior that we don't realize that it's only us who can save ourselves, right? So there's plenty of monsters within our own society that we can mine and make interesting for a movie. And so for me, if you look at just casual racism, there was a YouTube link that I watched where, you know, these poor little like gaggle of people, they were in Oregon and they were protesting. I don't know what they were protesting exactly. It definitely wasn't anything that was going on in Portland. It was like in some rural place, and they were on the side of a road, and this guy who looked like an absolutely normal, unassuming, young-ish white dude gets out of his car and he goes over to them, and he is apoplectic. I mean, you can see the veins in his forehead. He's like, what are you doing? And then he starts making a chimpanzee sound at the cameraman, who happens to be black.
Oof.
And the way that he was so a matter of fact about it. It made your blood run cold, because he was so centered in his absolute knowing that his hatred was right. And nothing violent happened because he was on camera the whole time.
Yeah.
But he couldn't even articulate why he was so angry. And he wasn't yelling and screaming, he was calm. And it terrified me. And I thought, wow, that's a real monster. Like, and they're everywhere. And we should start examining that. If you look at Gone with the Wind is absolutely horrific. And we believed that. It was so effective in its propaganda that I heard a pretty famous young black woman a few months back talking about how she used to pretend to be Scarlet. She couldn't even index that, oh no, sweetheart, you would have been the enslaved. Like, she had not made that connection, this young woman. And she was saying it, she wasn't saying it as a self-examination of herself and the effectiveness of the propaganda of Gone with the Wind. She was talking about Gone with the Wind as one of her favorite films and how she would pretend to be Scarlet. And this was a black woman.
Wow.
And so these are the stories that we have effectively told ourselves and made ourselves believe the fallacy of what the antebellum America looked like. And so, you know, we would be remiss and would have missed out on a tremendous opportunity not to tell this story at this time. It's going to make some people squirm. It's going to make people really uncomfortable. And that's the point. Discomfort is, if I'm comfortable, why am I going to move?
Yeah.
If I'm comfortable, then I'm going to stay where I'm at. If I put my hand on a hot stove, I'm going to move it because it's uncomfortable.
How do you deal with that? I mean, how do you like take these characters and go, are you nervous? Or do you get afraid that there is that kind of mindset out there that they're going to see this movie, that they're going to attack this movie, they're going to go and, you know, do the 1 star and do all that bullshit? Does that freak you out, or do you even think about that?
we always knew that it was going to be that we were going to have that experience because of what the movie is. The movie is it's explosive, and it's going to be, and I don't in any way want or mean to sound self-congratulatory. That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that the movie in and of itself, just the subject matter and what we are doing is something that is most definitely going to cause these sorts of conversations. Look at 1619. Look at the 1619 Project. The 1619 Project, simply Nicole Hannah-Jones, one of the most brilliant writers who has, been engaged in this research for years. She's with the New York Times. She was simply correcting the record with the real facts of history. And the backlash was immediate. The death threats were immediate. And you had, till this day, you had Trump. I hate that I said his name. It's like Rumpelstiltskin. But you had, the president over the weekend saying that he would defund the state of California if they taught the 1619 projects as a part of the public school curriculum.
Wow. Yeah.
Because if that doesn't give you an idea of the polarized environment that we find ourselves living in, we know exactly what this is. And I hope that what we've done in Antebellum, I think that if you don't recognize the continuous shot of, the first part of the movie, the color, the cinematography, if you don't recognize those things, or if you don't see those things, then, it's fine to grade the movie on its merits, right?
Sure.
But if you start getting into a place where it purely turns political, we actually do want that. We want those confrontations to happen, but we understand that we'll still have to be dealing with the one-star people that are just looking to damage the film, that are looking to spray graffiti all over someone's art and not criticize, but serve as vandals. We're like, this is a movie for adults. You're an adult, and if you find yourself so traumatized, but yet you continue to live in a country and an environment that is traumatizing every day, that we're living in an open air shooting gallery because we are unwilling to confront the truth and all of its ugliness. And so you want to continue to look at fantasy while the reality is so brutal and consistent in its dehumanization of an entire race of people, which has really destabilized the entire country at this point.
Doubling back a little bit, you touched upon the cinematography of this film, and I did actually want to spend a little time talking about your visual presentation of this film and the approach, because, for example, for those who haven't seen the movie yet, and you really should, the opening of the movie is so effective in that it opens with this kind of idyllic shot of, this family and the plantation, this Gone with the Wind approach that we're used to. And by the end of this shot, it's devolved into this horrific situation that was incredibly effective. And, every frame in this movie looked like a painting. Like, what was your visual inspiration going into this, and kind of your approach to presenting this film through your visuals, and what you wanted people to take from that?
Well, what's interesting, a lot of the imagery that was on our initial mood board was from Gone with the Wind. And trying to take that view of the antebellum South and kind of put a truthful, lens on it. And we actually ended up using the lenses from Gone with the Wind and refitting them for our camera so that we could use those lenses to show the antebellum South more accurately, and not a romanticized version of it. But no, we put so much care into every shot. We worked with our fantastic cinematographer Pedro Luke and we storyboarded for 8 hours a day in pre-production with him exactly how we wanted to shoot everything. So when we got to set, we didn't, waste a lot of time. There wasn't a ton of coverage. We shot what we wanted. We're very proud of the film.
We were looking for Italian Vogue meets, the Antebellum South. We wanted to take that drab, enslaved imagery and turn that on its head. We cast the face of Gucci makeup as the woman who's wearing the green dress and running at the beginning of the movie. We enlisted the services of the brilliant Mary Zofries, who works almost exclusively with the Coen brothers, as our costume designer. We were really, really specific in what we wanted this to feel like, because as first-time feature directors, and we don't feel like first-time anything. For us, we knew exactly what we were going to do and how it was going to get done. But for people that don't know us, which no one knows us, so it was important that in the intro of the movie that we made it very clear that you're in for something serious, that you are going to go on a ride, and that we say what you will, but that we care about every little thing. And so those, the imagery that you see in the movie, it really is about each frame. We needed to feel like it looked and felt like a painting, and that the colors were prismatic, and that you felt immersed in something that didn't seem it was in reality, but also seemed otherworldly. Because Gone with the Wind was really it was otherworldly and so beautiful. It was a beautiful, it's for the
the shadows, the oranges.
What? It was.
We created Antebellum to be experienced in a theater, communally, with a theatrical experience, and we put a lot of work into that, and it pains us that, you guys had to watch it on a low-res link.
That's devastating.
It's devastating.
Yeah, there's very few movies that recently I've seen a lot, and I'm seeing everything I review on a small screen, and yours is one that I was just like, oh, I want to see this on display. And
I know.
But I give you credit because it's still effective. It's still powerful. The visuals are stunning.
Oh, thank you.
And one way to look at it is that now you're coming into people's homes with this. If you want to take a glass half full approach, that we may not get the And for what it's worth, I did, I took the HDMIs, I plugged it into the big TV. I wanted to experience this as big.
Oh, thank you.
So we tried.
For us, when we wrote our letter to the DGA, for them to accept us as a duo, because it's so rare. But when we wrote the letter about our obsession with movies, and how when I was a kid growing up in Houston, I would make my parents take me to the only theater in all of Houston, the fourth largest city in the country, that was still had the giant curtain over the screen, Majestic Metro Theater. And for me, it was about the series of seductions that is the theater, from the smell of the popcorn to getting there into the auditorium, into your seat, and people watching, having this really communal experience, but without having to talk to other people. And in this time that we find ourselves in at the moment, prior to the global pandemic and prior to the Great Racial Reckoning, just the way that technology would constantly steal us from ourselves and from the present moment, it felt like movies offered a mini vacation, that you could just go into the theater and turn your phone off and escape for a couple of hours, and whatever it was. And that's the magic of movies. Movies are just they're just really, I don't know, they're magic. and if you can see them in the theater, especially if you have a filmmaker that cared enough to design it with the theater and you in mind. You know, we don't make stories. We don't make stories for the audience. We make things for ourselves that we would like, but we design everything to be the most optimum experience for what they're going to have within the sort of mechanics of what it requires to do it. So we spent a lot of time on making this movie something that would be really special in the theater. Thank God people are able to see it in France and in Spain and in Hong Kong, in the theater, in the Netherlands. We're happy about that, but we wish that we could still have nice things in America and we could go to the theater safely. But you know, at this time, it still doesn't feel, especially our hometown of Los Angeles, we can't go to the movies, and so no one would be able to see it here, and you can't go to the movies in New York City.
Yeah, it's definitely unfortunate.
Yeah. What now? Speaking, I guess, on the beauty of this film, is there a shot for both of you? Let's start with you, Chris. Is there a shot that means the most to you? There's so many, but there's for you. What really stood out?
I mean, that opening shot, yes, it was difficult and planned out, but I think the shot is at the end of the movie, when the sun is rising and we're 500 frames a second on Janelle on the horse. I remember that moment when we got that. I ran back and got the actual storyboard that we put together, and I put it right up to the monitor, and I brought Pedro, the cinematographer, over, and we were like, "It's exactly it, exactly what we wanted. We got it." So incredibly proud of that shot.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah, that.
Oh, it's gorgeous.
I was when I was watching it, I was, you know, my family was working, and I'm watching this sequence, and I'm just like, oh, getting so emotional, and my wife had to go, shh, we're getting to work. But it affected me, and I just feel it now. One of the things we talk about on the show a lot is music, and the score for this. And I tweeted about this weekend because this score just moves me. How did you find the composer, and what struck you? What was the sound you were looking for?
Well, we wanted something fresh and new, and we're new filmmakers. This is Janelle's first leading role. We wanted to keep it fresh, and so it's Nate Wonder and Roman Gianarthur, and it is their first time composing for a film, and
certainly not their last.
Definitely not their last. They absolutely nailed it. We kind of gave them very, wide parameters. We said we wanted something hauntingly beautiful, and we sent them some of the dailies. And I remember it was halfway through some night shoot that was very difficult, and we got this email on our phone, and it was the first 4 notes basically that start, and it energized everyone on the set. We were like, that's it, build on that.
They are geniuses, but Christopher and I are fanatical about music. Everything from Jeff Buckley to Ambrosia to Rush to Janelle Monae to Amy Winehouse to we love music, and so for us that was always going to be a really important factor in the movie. And to Christopher's point, just to further underscore what he said, we wanted something that felt like, when you listen to iconic, if you listen to the score from, Kubrick's just so brilliant with this, but the score from The Shining, it is just so, it's just a simple car ride around the mountains. And just like, I can't cuss on here, but it's just like, what?
You can cuss.
Oh, fuck! That you're about to really see something. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yes. The piano in Eyes Wide Shut.
It's like
just what that does with just a key,
right? So we knew, we told the composers who, it was really important to us also that you know, we represent diverse communities, and we wanted to make sure that we had other department heads that looked like us. So they're Black, and it was their first, that looked like me. It was their first movie, but we just told them beautifully haunting and perhaps a broken violin. And then the themes of the movie, one of them is beauty and horror living simultaneously in the same space. And that the beauty makes the horror just that much more horrific. Yeah, that's it. When I was a kid at a community pool once, I lost my footing, and I guess I was like 5, 6, and I went under into the deep end, and I didn't have my way yet, you know, and I had gone under, and I could see my people, and they were all having the best time, and it was in a cloud in the sky, and it was beautiful, and they were all having the best time, but they couldn't see me. And I never forgot it. It was like really horrific, and it was just all the beauty and all that was happening without knowing that I was suffering and trying to get help. And so we wanted that theme in the movie, that there's, you know, in some of those moments of where you could be flying on vacation and you don't know that there's so much suffering underneath you.
I mean, even with the Uber moment.
Yeah.
With the 2 Ubers.
Oh yes.
Oh,
we did,
yeah.
Because with the Uber car scene, it's the same thing. It's like the girls are having the time of their lives, and then Veronica is, you know, desperate for help.
Yeah.
There's definitely a duality at work there.
Yeah.
Yes.
And you know, speaking of music, you cast one of the most talented musicians working today, Janelle Monae, in this amazing performance. Like, she was perfect for it. How did she come to be involved in this project? Like, was this written for her? Because she was amazing.
No, I mean, we didn't have any particular actress in mind when we were writing it. She was put forward to us by WME. We share an agency, and we hadn't really considered her. We just, not that we, you know, we just hadn't thought of it. And if we had any reservation, it was just that, you know, she is a well-known pop star, and you don't want that to kind of detract from the character and take you out. Like, oh, look at Janelle Monae doing this, doing that. It turned out that was not the case at all, and she does an incredible job in this film. But what she does best, I think, in this film, and for what the character needs is the character needs to express so much without being able to say anything verbally. And Janelle is able to communicate so much with just a look that, I mean, she was
her performance, because, you know, she wouldn't appreciate us bragging on her because she's such a modest person. But I mean, her performance is breathtaking to us. We think that you know, it's grounded in something that feels really ancestral, and it's deep. And look, we were always, you know, we listened to Janelle's music. We were big fans of her music. We were not so familiar with her work on screen, and this role, you can imagine, I mean, she is the character, the actor who's playing that role, they're the heart and the spine of the movie. Yeah. You're basically in every scene. And so to jump from being an actress who worked in supporting roles to your first lead, I mean, that's a lead. Like, you have to literally lead the movie. And I think that she delivered in spades.
Oh, for sure. Her performance was incredible.
Oh, it's also
people do that. I hope that they acknowledge that, because that would be, you know, because I think we think it's a really special performance.
It's a brave performance. It's a powerful performance. What she goes through on screen, the trauma, the heartbreak is unsettling. I connected with that, and I think her performance is outstanding. Sorry to praise her too much, but man, wow.
I mean, you can't praise her too much. I mean, we want all the praise in the world for her. I just know that, like, you know, it's for other people to do, and not like, because, you know, she gets embarrassed about us gushing about her, but she's exceptional.
Yeah. Well, this whole cast. Let's talk a little bit about this whole cast, because it's a very tricky to get actors to play villains, especially like this, and do that well and without feeling a little tongue in cheek or a little, you know, like winking at the camera. Wow, both of these two, all the villains are fantastic, but Jenna Malone, wow.
Jenna, you know, we met Jenna at Sunset Tower as we were meeting actors for potential roles, and Jenna walked in, and, you know, she put her foot up on the chair, like in the way that Jenna does, and, you know, she just talked, and she's the thing about Jenna is she's a really intense listener. She almost looks through you, and she's listening to every word, and she is 100% present. And when she walked away, we thought, you know, how exciting would it be to have Jenna in this role, because, you know, she is a real character actor, and she killed it. She achieved a certain, I think, the nuance of the role, the subtlety of the way that she played it. She did a lot of research. We provided her with several books, but the book that really resonated with her was a book called They Were Once Her Property. And it really went into the history of women slave owners in the South. And
oh, wow.
Fascinating. And how, you know, they had full agency, and they knew exactly how to run their business. She's just, look, we were really fortunate across the board with our cast. We have Lorraine Mayfield, who's a legendary casting director. We share a casting director with Venture. She's amazing. And Lorraine Mayfield is a shot of Jack Daniels with no chaser. She's from the South. You know, she tells it like it is, and her recommendations you listen to intently. But for us, when we met Jenna face to face, we knew her incredible body of work, but meeting her face to face, we were 100% confident that she would deliver an extraordinary performance, which I think that she did.
Oh, definitely.
Oh, yeah.
She exudes a certain menace that is unfortunately familiar in today's world.
Yeah, exactly.
and I mean, like, you know, the world has gone through a lot since you guys shot this movie, not only with COVID, but with, you know, the horrible surge in police brutality, and, you know, America finally confronting these things. Do you view any elements of your film in a different light from when you first began in the before times, I suppose?
I love the before times.
Me too.
We've been engaged in this work for so long that it seems right on time that we were going to be hitting the next inflection point. This was not something that, I mean, it may appear prescient or prophetic on our part, what the movie is saying, given the fact that we made it 2 years ago, but we could have set our watches to it. We knew that this was coming, and by the way, the next time if we don't prevent it, it's going to be much worse.
Unfortunately, so.
So, you know, it's, and when I caught what you said about, the police brutality. The police brutality has always existed. When we first did our work with Trayvon Martin and with amplifying the issue of Trayvon Martin and engaging Black folks to get them to participate in the midterm elections. You fast forward to Ahmaud Arbery and George Floyd, and you take Trayvon Martin, and Trayvon Martin, it's the same thing, except Trayvon Martin wasn't filmed.
Yeah.
So
Right.
Gil Scott-Heron said, "The revolution will be televised." And he was absolutely correct. Now that's prophetic.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, exactly.
I didn't even think of that. Oh my
Yeah.
goodness.
That's prophetic. Yeah.
For
because
sure.
You look at it like now, the best weapon that we have against police brutality and inequity is a phone.
Right.
Yeah.
No, absolutely. It's provides, it's showing these things that have been perhaps under the radar for a large group of people and these things.
I mean, look at how some of the police are behaving. The way that they're behaving is saying to you that it's like watching a reality TV person who is on with a veteran reality TV person, and they still don't seem to get it because they still think that they're in their former life where everything's not filmed and everything is not mic'd.
Right.
And then you get caught up, and you see these police, their behavior is such where they still didn't get it, that now they are constantly under a microscope of observation.
Right.
Before they could turn off their own cameras, or, oh, whoops, I don't know what happened.
Yeah.
But the first thing that we're telling our Black boys, our kids now, is if you get pulled over, put your hands on the steering wheel, but start your phone, and make sure that you're recording the entire event, and make sure that the cop is aware that it's being recorded.
Yeah.
I remember seeing for the first time for the critics group, Hollywood Critics Association. I watched the Hate You Give, and that opening sequence. It's something I don't think we ever, as a white man, I don't even think about that. I don't even think about, well, what do I tell my kid if we get pulled over? I've been pulled over by a cop with my child, and it's, you don't think about that. You don't think, oh, I got to put my hands here. That's beyond the pale to me, to grow up thinking that and having to think about things like that.
Well, also, there are people that want to see the extermination of what they see as an encroaching population of insurgents. And they don't view non-white, non-Anglo-Saxon people as Americans. They view, they would give more credence to a white person whose family has been here for 2 generations than with my family who's been here since the beginning. And I think that we've got to get to a place where, well, we don't have to. It's going to be one thing or the other. But I can tell you that the country will not allow this conversation to be deferred another minute. And it's not just conversation, it's action. We're at that place now where it's just enough not having it. And we're going to need to change this from the the education system. We have a documentary that we're working on called All Deliberate Speed, which is about the resegregation of the U.S. public school system. You know, these are issues that
the U.S. public schools are more segregated today than they were in the 60s.
Yep.
Wow.
And people don't
even know that.
Wow.
Which is causing bigger and bigger chasms and fissures between us that make it the acreage. There's so much. The acreage it's so far that people are not growing up seeing other people that don't look like them, people that have completely different experiences, and that's important. I think that we need to. I think diversity for young people, you know, as they're coming up in school, and then also we know that the education outcomes for schools that are more integrated are much better. But look, it's a really important time for a new kind of filmmaking, and I think that, and we saw it with Parasite last year. Like it's exciting because we're able to explore these issues in a way that doesn't need to feel preachy or finger wagging. It needs to be immersive and effective in that it's grounded in an experience that resonates as something real. And so we hope, our ardent hope anyway, is that Antebellum has that kind of effect, and whether you love it or hate it, that it's going to cause you to think, and you're going to want to have a conversation about it.
I love that. Well, guys, for the last thing that we usually do on this show is we tell a scary story.
Yeah.
Whether it's a ghost story, whether it's whatever. But I'm wondering if you guys have a story, I mean, specifically because of dealing with such an atrocity in human history. Do you have a story that you read or learned that you would like to share? Or do you have a good ghost story? I don't know. Whatever you want to do.
Whatever way you'd like to take it.
Yeah.
We have a fantastic scary story that is our next film that's called Rapture. Unfortunately, we can't tell that one on
What a tease.
No, Rapture is about the millions of the global population vanishing. And it gosh, I wish we could, we'll talk to you about it offline, but it's
we're very curious.
But that's our next movie, and we already finished the script and are into it with Lionsgate. But like, as far as a scary story, this isn't, and I think maybe somewhere along the lines this could have been, parts of it could have seeded Antebellum. But when I was a kid, I was going into the 4th grade in Houston, and we lived in an area called Kingwood at the time. I mean, I think that I was one of the few black kids, if not the only black kid in my class. But I used to ride my bike around those trails, and I felt relatively free. I didn't have a real awareness about my otherness yet. I did, but not to the extent of what would happen next. But I was on my bike, and these 2 white kids were at the edge of the forest near the clubhouse, and they were in camouflage clothing, and they put their rifle to me and told me to get off my bike and come with them.
Whoa.
And they took me into the forest, and they held me there for just not knowing what was going to happen. They just held me there in this forest for what seemed like eternity. But it was one of the most traumatizing experiences that I've ever had. And I ended up when one of them was away, I ran as fast as I could to my bike. I don't know that they would have ever really done anything to me. I think they were just, having sadistic fun and just holding a kid hostage. But the whole thing was extremely racial, about my not belonging there. And I think that those stories, I think that they happen more so than we may have knowledge of.
Wow, that's horrific.
Sorry.
It's probably the scariest story we've had.
Yeah.
Well, guys, it's honestly it's a real honor to have you guys on to join us for Sound Scary. This was a really special episode, and this is the first time we've actually released an episode in support of a movie the day it's happening today. Get this movie. Now let's clear this up. It is VOD. Is it going to be available in drive-ins or that kind of thing?
That I'm not sure. I wish that I could answer that question intelligently. We know that the movie is all over Europe in theaters. In America, your best way is PVOD. Apple, Amazon, get it. We want you to be a part of the conversation. And I'll say that every movie that we do moving forward, that we can't wait to come back on your podcast and have a big conversation.
We'd love to.
It's important to have film folk who are really supportive of this kind of filmmaking, because I think that the conversation needs to happen. And when we have respected members of the film community, they're just as passionate about the craft as we are, to help shape the conversation. It's important, and we're just honored that you invited us to talk, and we can't wait to come on next to talk about Rapture, and we're going to become huge fans of your podcast, and we'll support it.
We would love to have you guys back. Seriously, this has been a great conversation, and we want to make sure that our viewers definitely go out and see this film. Sounds Scary, fully endorsed. We loved this movie. We've been looking forward to talking to you about this since we watched it. This has been a great conversation.
Thank you very much, guys. We appreciate it.
Thank you.
Yeah, seriously.
And best of luck with the release of this film. I hope it gets a lot of traction. I think it deserves to be seen by a lot of people.